Welcome back on the AM show. Even before we get into our next conversation, something that skipped my mind, I have to run it by you. So don't drug your dreams away. On the back of the last conversation we have, don't drug your dreams away. That's what NACOC is putting forth. And World Drugs Day is Monday. Guess what? They have an event at the Alisa Hotel here in Accra at 9 a.m. They have a Durbar, so make it a point to follow, join them, and let's all stay drug-free. Don't drug your dreams away. But let's get into the substantive conversation now. We host a two-term member of parliament, am I correct? And he recently got the nod from his constituency one more time. Not as close as we would have thought. He is the lawmaker for Ningo Pram Pram. I'm sure now a lot of you know exactly whom I'm talking about. His alias is Jata. I don't know whether it's Jata Cemento. Sam George, welcome back.
Thank you so much.
I know it's not been easy getting here this morning. Mantaya, but we're grateful that you've made the time to join us.
Mantaya. That reminds me of some of the cabaying on Tech Campus. You know, when the students are praying and they are groaning in the spirit and the hand is on the ear. Haya, Mantaya, Mantaya.
Really? Are you serious right now? No, I didn't see that coming. Hey! You used to hear them say that, Mantaya, Mantaya.
At times the tongues, you blow the tongues for like 1 hour. Mantaya, Mantaya. Anyway, it's good to be here.
I'm sure you've not seen that at the Parents' Dome, though, where you go to church. You've not seen that one there.
Our intercessors are really solid.
Them day for me.
If you pray with the Archbishop can pray for 14 hours non-stop. So the man is a prayer machine.
I see. This man tire bit. I mean, I've had cause, Christian though I am, I've had cause to, back then on campus, speak to a few people because right outside your window and they would be blaring, Charlie, you've gone to Shaka, you want to sleep a bit. And it wasn't easy, but we've been through all of that. Some would even classify you as a demon because you want to get some rest. But since we've started on that note of faith, I'm going to box you into a little corner. You're a deacon, right?
An elder.
An elder in your church. How did you react when recently the whole Nogokpo thing came up and the challenge was thrown to your archbishop that, hey, you have an ultimatum, show up. I engaged Reverend Professor Frimpong Manso, not Frimpong Boateng, Frimpong Manso, on that matter. And he had his own interesting thoughts from the religious perspective and also the perspective of knowing when to say what, and also the perspective of if you meet someone who doesn't err and 1 out of, let's say, 1,000 times, you find you have to know how to balance issues. What is your personal take? I mean, when your pastor, the founder of your church, was being bashed left, right, and center?
I've stayed away from commenting on this matter, and I think I still want to do. I just want to say that I was in church that day because I attended the Supernatural Empowerment Summit, which was an extremely successful summit where the power of God was made manifest. I urge people to know that every communication is in a context. This conversation we're having is in a context. If you take it out of context, you can spin it in 1,000 ways. People have watched a video that is less than about 3 minutes and drawn their conclusions. That whole sequence in the sermon was about 15 minutes.
Well, that's the danger of social media. People often have very limited information to play with.
But that's the point. You don't draw conclusions and run riot on the basis of limited information, else you come across as being shallow. Okay, I hold the view that the Archbishop made the comments he made in context. He came back subsequently to clarify. People seem to have moved away and moved on. People fail to realize the fact that the other side issued threats and gave deadlines which have passed. I have respect for everybody's belief, but I am a firm believer in the efficacy and power in the blood of Jesus Christ. And I know that even those who practice traditional beliefs know that for all the deities, there is a supreme being. And that supreme being, you see, when people say that the white man brought us a God that we worship as Christians, I say to them that they are very oblivious of our culture. There's a difference between culture and idolatry. When you take Akan or Ga, in all of our languages, we've got names, even in Ewe, we've got names for the various deities, and we've got a name for the supreme being. In Ga, Gadang, we call him Ata Nanyumo. In Akan, he is called Odumankuma Nyankupong. In Ewe, he is called Mau Ga Sobolisa or something.
Sobolisa, yeah.
Yes. He's a supreme being. And all of these lesser deities are under him. The God we as Christians call is Yahweh. That's his Hebrew name. YHWH is his tetragrammaton name. It is that same God our ancestors called Ata Nanyumo. So the white man didn't bring us a new God. We have chosen to serve the supreme being. And for me, be it in the cosmic realm or wherever anybody wants to go, ultimately, he who manifests in three beings as Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit is ultimate. And all powers and all tongues will bow and kneel before him. And so long as we call upon his name is a strong tower, the righteous will run into it and they'll be safe. No power, no weapon fashioned against us will prosper.
Well, thank you for laying the basis for the conversation from that angle. I mean, I didn't mean to go there, honestly. But since you started on the bit of the...
Mantaya.
No. I'm not being mischievous. Can you do it for me again?
Oh, no, I won't.
Just.
Before it becomes a trending video.
No, what you've done already. This one, what you are going to add will not make any difference.
Charlie, Mantaya.
Sometimes you must just laugh a bit. Laugh it off.
You know, that is actually what has kept us together as a country. And that's what I would say to everyone who's taking this thing very personal. And I've seen people try to make it about a region and an ethnic group and all of that. Look, what has kept us as a country is our ability to look each other in the face and laugh at each other.
Yeah.
There are things that are said about us as Gans. When you say that about... Look, recently, people tagged me on social media. A lady had gone on social media and said there's no successful Ga man because Gans are lazy. Why should I respond to such a person? And even in that video, people said, but Sam George is a Gandangme. And so, at MPs there, you always need someone from the place. So that's why that's not success. That's the person's opinion.
So they've not seen the Daniel Macaulay's and all these people in there.
Am I lazy? Am I unsuccessful? If I am not what has been put out, why do I even waste my time about it? There are things that are said about Fantis, things that are said about Ashantis, things that are said about Kwewus, things that are said about Northerners, Inzimas. Look, everybody there's something we say about everybody.
Stereotype, negative stereotype.
And we all laugh about it.
Yeah.
You get it? It is that has allowed us to go on and we make light of very serious issues in our country. It's the reason why we've survived. And I think that we should not lose sight of it. I mean, people are free to complain and vent their spleen, but there is a limit to it. You know, there's a limit to which you take it. If everybody wants to become rigid, would lose what makes us the beauty of our country. The beauty. South Africa calls themselves the Rainbow Nation because of the multiple colors and ethnicities. We are a Kente nation. If you look at the Kente cloth in its beauty, it is the intermix and that mix.
That interweaving of different yarns and strands.
That makes it one solid piece. And that's the various ethnic groups of Ghana that come together to give us our unique identity. Let's not break it. It's important we don't break it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a completely different conversation on national cohesion, but I think that we just need to be careful because we're beginning to build setting walls and barriers. This is a no-go area for you if you are not. We can say it to ourselves. You can't say it to us. I mean, Charlie, when Gans also say don't crack this joke about us, okay, if you do it, we are sacking you from our land. Well, I mean, I go around places. I go to buy, the other day in East Legon, I stopped to buy coconut. And I said, oh, and then the coconut seller replied to me, Samu kasano minte. Do I also go leave it and say you are on my land? And you're referring to my language as Samu kasano. Yesterday there was a video of a man being arrested by the police. I don't know if you've seen it.
I've not.
And the police were speaking to him in Chi. He was holding a machete. He was speaking in a language I hear is Grushi. That's what he speaks. And he didn't understand what the police were saying. The police didn't understand him. And thankfully, the police were able to disarm him and arrest him. But the fact of the matter is, must everybody speak Twi?
Definitely not.
The fact that I don't speak Twi doesn't mean I'm not Ghanaian. In fact, the Constitution says in Article 14.2 that if an arresting officer must speak
in a language,
that the person understands.
Exactly.
You understand it? But we've come to that place where it's almost been accepted. Everywhere you go, people speak to you. Even in government offices, they speak to you in Twi.
But let's also say this from the legal standpoint. If you're trying to conduct an arrest and you cannot speak a language that the person, I mean, you would have wanted to come in with someone who can speak the language, but in circumstances beyond your control, like in this instance. I mean, if you see the police and you see that they are signaling, so where linguistic barriers,
sign language, maybe to put down or something, you cannot say that you don't comprehend when you are being signaled to maybe drop a machete. But I understand that basis, that purported everybody must
undercurrent that everyone must speak a certain that is problematic. Very interesting way we've started the conversation. But let's now talk about the state of the nation, Ghana's economy, and where it is currently. We've got our IMF deal. We've got the first tranche. The CD has not exactly been stable, but there are some gains we've made in terms of real GDP increments. The Ghana Statistical Service reports today, for example, for the first quarter, it has increased by 4.2%. The balance on our books for what we have to do as a country has also stabilized a bit more. Inflation saw a little uptick of about 1 percentage point in May from April, which is not what we would have wanted. But now we are producing more oil, for example. It's increased by a number of thousands, tens of thousands of barrels. Let me just get the figure, 40,000 barrel increments. So the Jubilee field, which was producing about 85,000, is now going to produce about 100,000 and more. It has the capacity of hitting 120,000. But when you look at the dynamics, the reality of the Ghana man, so to speak, what do you see?
You know, we've always said that Ghanaians are magicians because you wonder how Ghanaians survive. If you ask me how I survive, I can't tell, giving the reality, and I'm sure same will apply to you. When you look at what your outlay is and what you do in a month, and you look at what your take-home is, you ask yourself, how am I able to pull this off?
It gets worse when you're on a bank facility. Absolutely. Around this time.
Absolutely.
It's a killer.
Many young people have taken mortgages to own homes, and you have to pay, and these mortgages are dollar denominated, and it's killing people. So look, the reality is we are in dire straits. And you see, when I see some of these figures that say that our balance is looking good, our balance is looking better, you know, they say statistics is like a bikini. It reveals a lot, but it also hides critical details.
I've never heard that before. You're saying things this morning, though. Statistics.
It's like a bikini. It reveals a lot. When a woman is wearing a bikini, it shows you a lot, but it conceals very critical
details
and details. Yeah, because what this statistics is telling you is that our balance of payments are looking good, but it's not telling you that it's because we're not servicing existing loan arrangements that we have. We haven't serviced any of them since November last year. And so when you're not paying your creditors, but those debts have not been written off, those debts are sitting there and waiting for our children to come and pay, you cannot be patting yourself on the back and saying we're doing good. I mean, I was at the send-off of the Indian High Commissioner last Friday, and the special guest was our finance minister. And I cringed in my chair when he gave his speech, and he was thanking India and celebrating the fact that when the IMF board chair dropped the gavel to announce that Ghana had been giving the 3 billion loan agreement, the room burst into applause, and that shows Ghana's goodwill. And I asked myself, why is this man still our finance minister? He's proudly telling us that the room celebrated us going to get a loan after we had been begging for it for almost 8 months. I mean, how pathetic can you be to be the guy running our finances? That what you're celebrating is akin to the watch party he threw 5 years ago. Telling us that it is a thing of pride that people were clapping for Ghana, that after 8 months of going around and begging everybody who is anybody in this world, from the Paris Club to China, to get a loan, to qualify for a loan, we finally qualified for the loan. You're so broke, you don't qualify on your own strength to go and borrow. But you have to beg someone to beg for you to beg to be begged and you get to be borrowed. I mean, that's the real situation. Rotation nurses. And you say, what's it for the ordinary Ghana man? Rotation nurses. And I speak about it because I have one living in my house. They're finishing their rotation, which is their national service. These are nursing trainees. They're finishing their national service this month. You know, they haven't been paid 1 month, even 1 month of their NSS allowance.
Out of the regular 10 months
out
or
of the 11 months they're supposed to work. This is the 11th month.
Wow.
They have not been paid 1 cedi. So ask yourself, how have these young people, some of them have no family in Accra, were posted to Accra. How have they survived in Accra?
Remind me, there was supposed to be an increment to this at some
Yes,
point.
I think to 799 from 599.
Right, from 500 to 700 and something. Has that happened though?
How would it happen when you've not received to know whether, on paper, yes, there's been an increase, but they have not received 1 month. They are ending. So for an ordinary young Ghanaian nursing trainee, that is the picture of Ghana. They most likely have borrowed. And look, their executives, the national executives came to meet me in Parliament 3 months ago to make a statement on the floor of the House for them. And they said to me that, look, they are being forced to offer sexual favors. They are being harassed by landlords because they owe. Some of them have to offer their bodies to be able to buy food because they are serving this country. So if you see a glut of Ghanaian health workers running away from the country to the UK and to Canada, look at what's happening to our rotation nurses. That's ordinary Ghanaians. The ordinary teacher.
But let me be quick to also point to the fact that while the second scenario you painted about women having to offer their bodies to do X, Y,
not just women, even men,
just to make ends meet, and it's a horrible situation. And I have known people personally from different facets who have had to do that. Some people, sometimes you have to bend over backwards to help. But I'm also saying that while we chastise this government, it's not new. There are times when, under your administration, the erstwhile administration, some people also did not get their stipends. Students abroad did not get what was due them. I remember when I was in Cuba at the time, when the NDC was in power, there were times when we did not get our stipends. I mean, that can be really frustrating. Obi Mainso and going through that. It happened over time. It's not a rarity.
I would be the last person to sit here and posit that it never happened under the NDC. But that's the two things I'll say. But that's the reason why the NDC was voted out, because this was supposed to be a better alternative. True?
Right.
People voted the NDC out because we weren't seen as good enough, and Nanado was a better alternative. But let me tell you, at no point in time under the NDC did anybody have to go their whole national service and not get paid. At no point in time. At least you would have gotten 3 months, 4 months, there'll be some arrears. As you speak about, when you were in Cuba, and many other people who have been beneficiaries of government support for external education, would all tell you, every government, be it the Rawlings administration, be it the Kufuor administration, the Mills or the Mahama administration, have always been in some arrears. 3 months, 6 months. As we speak, this government is owing people over a year of stipends. So what we're talking about is not that, we're not saying there should be no arrears, because that would be unfair to say, because every government has a certain level of arrears. It is the magnitude of the problem. At no point in time have Ghanaian students outside the country been owed the length of time that they are being owed now. That's the reality. That's the issue. You see, if someone owes you 3 months and somebody owes you 9 months or 10 months, they can't be the same. Yes, both owe you, but one is better than the other.
Right.
And so that's the challenge we're talking about. That's the issue that we're talking about. And it is these challenges that, and you see, for me, a sister TV station put out a tweet, and government spokespersons went berserk. They said, take your salary today, convert it to dollar, and compare it to your salary in 2016. If your salary in 2016 was 2,000 cedis, in 2016 was 2,000 cedis, and let me even assume in a very unlikely situation that your salary has doubled, and now it's 4,000 cedis. In 2000, the dollar was changing. In 2016, the dollar was changing for 4.1, between 4 and 4.1 when we handed over. So your 2,000 Ghana cedis at 4 was $500. Now, I'm not comparing your salary as fixed though. I am assuming that your salary has doubled to 4,000. Today, the dollar is 12. 4,000 by 12. I want to get a decimals. 4,000
a factor of 3
divided by 12.
A factor of 3.
With your salary doubled, your salary is now worth $333, 33 cents. So you have already lost almost, give or take, almost 40% of the real value of your salary. Now, this is without considering inflation, which was at about between 9 and 11% in 2016, and today is at 42%. So you realize that if I was to use your salary as a fixed figure of 2,000, today, your salary is actually worth less than $170, it's about $165, compared to $500 in 2016. So if you want to see the real state of the Ghana man, it's not about what Sam George comes to say. It's not about macroeconomic indicators. And I always say, look, we don't take macroeconomic indicators to the market.
Right.
When you go to the market, you pay cash. You don't pay macroeconomic indicators. And so for me, and that's why I feel that people in public office must have a conscience. We must have a conscience. And if Baumia's conscience was not seared with hot iron, he wouldn't even have picked forms to contest. Because this is a man who was sold to us as the economic messiah, as a whiskey. In fact, that is how he was sold and outdoored by the flag bearer Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo in 2016. This was a man who gave us lectures and set questions for his predecessor, who was the vice president at the time and head of economic management team. Today, this is the state of our economy. And every time I watch that video of he making fun of himself, and you saw Alan Chemanting and Osafo Mafuenko and Professor Boateng, George, laughing at him. When at Pentecost International Worship Center, I said, if the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate will expose you. But if you see an exchange rate that has weakened now, you cannot say that is the fundamentals. And everybody burst into laughter, including himself, and he was laughing at himself. It tells you the state of our economy. When you see Ken Ofori-Atta and Mahmoud Bawumia as the two people running our economy, it explains to you the mess that we are in. But when public officers do not have a conscience and cannot stand up and own the fact that they have failed the people they serve, we're saddled with this problem. So I'm not the one going to tell you that we are in a mess. Just look at like President Kufuor said in 2000. She was sitting him.
But let me ask you though. Let me ask you though. In the midst of all of this, the NDC is supposed to be bringing hope to the people of Ghana. The question that begs is, what is your alternative? You know why? We elected this administration to bring us hope, change. That has not come. In the course of the Fourth Republic, we've been embarking on that same hopeful exercise every 4 years. We seem not to be finding hope. So what exactly then is the alternative? Because we shouldn't have an alternative for alternative's sake. We need real solutions to our problems.
Absolutely.
Very quickly, I want us to get into the bit about the ratings agencies. What then is the alternative? What can you do differently? In fact, there are those who have proffered that with where our economy is now, even if your administration comes to power in 2024, you have a migraine to deal with, and that you likely wouldn't fare any better.
Let me be brutally frank, and many people may not, even within my party, may not like what I'm about to say, but John Mahama is not a magician. He doesn't have a magic wand that, God willing, in 2025, when he's sworn in as the next president of Ghana, he will wave and everything will just change. The mess is endemic. The systemic mess is deep. And so when you say we have a migraine to deal with, absolutely. But what John Mahama has is a fantastic opportunity to go down in the annals of our history as the man who hit the reset button for this country. And that is going to be on him as president, because he's not going to be saddled with thinking of a next election. He's coming in to serve one term. His focus must be on fixing and resetting our country and taking the tough decisions that this government is unable to take and focusing on resetting Ghana for the next generation. So you're going to need a president who's going to come in, and that president, I believe, is John Mahama, who's learned from his own mistakes. And don't get it wrong, the first John Mahama administration between 2013 and 2016 did make mistakes. He's had the benefit of 8 years to sit back, learn from those mistakes, come back and take the right decisions. But you see, when you ask what our alternative is, I'm not going to take the wind out of John Mahama's sail, because he's going to be speaking, having a number of policy dialogue. The manifesto will come out and he will speak to all of those. But you should bear in mind that if you look at the trajectory of this government, almost everything that has gone wrong was predicted by the minority. We advised them on e-levy. We said the e-levy wasn't going to achieve what they were going to do. It was just going to saddle us with bigger problems. We've come there. We asked them to go to the IMF. They came and they danced all over the place and said they would not go to the IMF. There was no way we would go to the IMF. Here we are. If we had gone to the IMF 8 months earlier, we wouldn't have had this mess we're in. When they spoke about excess capacity and all, we warned them. We said to them, look, be careful what you're talking about, because you can't say there is excess capacity. Today, here we are. They are unable to, after collecting ESLA and even extending ESLA and renegotiating the AXA and Ameri deals, look at the mess we're in. So everything that has gone wrong with this government, the minority has sounded it off and warned them. I would also remain a critical voice. And I believe that there are many people, because you see, many of us are not going to sit back and allow the next Mahama administration come and do business as usual. No, that's not going to happen.
In other words, should your party win,
when my party wins,
if your party wins, you are going to push to ensure that the right things are done. Isn't that rather? I'm sorry, the word that is coming may offend you, so I'll not use it. But is that not rather
patronizing?
Yes, because we know that the power doesn't lie in your bosom. Many have said that. And so in the end, those at the very top make decisions that sometimes are unpopular with even you, the members of parliament. And there's nothing you can do.
No, but we need to come to a place where we begin to speak up. Whether it's your party in power or not your party in power. Because ultimately it is Ghana that needs to be saved. We need to begin to call ourselves out. Whether it's your party or the opposition. Look,
you do that and you are whipped in Parliament.
Well, you will be whipped if you want to be whipped. Why? Sitting here today, it's not my leadership that scheduled me to come here.
There are times when they do. There
are times when the leadership of the party would. But do you know Sam George to be one who doesn't speak his mind when he wants to speak his mind?
Anyway. So important points.
You see, people forget that even when Mahama was in government in 2015 to 20, between 2013 and 2017, I was always speaking my mind. Maybe at that time, people hadn't taken notice about Sam George. I'll give you a typical example. I sat in this studio in 2015, when President Mahama attended the State of the Nation's address in his Toyota Avalon, and ministers of state came in their Land Cruiser using state fuel, I sat in the studios of Joy FM and blasted ministers of state. At that time, I was a presidential staffer. Because you see, my brother, if we do not come to a place where we begin to call out what is wrong as wrong, irrespective of which party, we will all get, this country will sink. Now that the prices have gone up, when the dollar reached 16, at a certain point in time, Chief, was there a special place for MPs? Today, when I do the groceries for my house, I know how much I used to spend on groceries 3 years ago for a week in the house, and I know how much I spend now. When I go there, I don't flash my parliamentary ID card and get a special rebate. It's the same way nobody in government today, the MPP spokespersons who are running from TV station to TV station defending the government, when they go to the market, they pay the same price.
Point made. So that is something we must learn
so
to
we
must
call
out.
a straight. Yeah.
Right. Let's lump up these matters. We have limited time, but I want you to look at the NDC's inner wranglings. Muntaka Mubarak, your member of parliament for Asanwasi, and what he's been saying about how he was targeted, first of all, in terms of losing his position as the chief whip of the minority, and then in contesting Asanwasi one more time, and the inner machinations. And he says he's forgotten, but he's not forgiven. And the Jachi Kwesen and Ato Kaselato Forsen saga. I want you to lump those together for me. Then we can take a quick swipe, if you like, at the ratings agencies and what President Akufo-Addo said. I think it's Professor Lord Mentor who made mention of the fact that the president was only upset because with those credits ratings, we couldn't go and borrow. But any quick takes on these matters?
Okay, so first and foremost, power and leadership is transient. Nobody was born for a particular position. I have enormous respect for the Honorable Muntaka Mubarak, but I believe that it's time for us to move on. Not everybody was happy with the way the transition happened and all the drama around it. We all had our demons that we had to fight in our constituencies to emerge. The beauty of it is God has given us victory. We are moving on. I mean, some of these things are things that we need to move on. And I urge everyone that feels slighted or feels pained to let it go and let's move on. And to my senior Muntaka, I know that he loves the party, and I know that he's going to come around and champion our cause in the Ashanti region.
Jachi Kwesen.
To the Jachi Kwesen case, it is just an embarrassing spectacle of how low this government has sunk, that they're focused on Jachi Kwesen and are so blatantly abusing power and incumbency and trying to carry the judiciary along. Look.
Do you remember the case of Adamu Sakandi?
They're completely different issues.
Tell me.
Jachi Kwesen, at the time he contested the elections, did not have any other citizenship apart from the Ghanaian citizenship. Jachi Kwesen, at the time he swore the oath to become a member of parliament, did not have any other citizenship. Adamu Dramani Sakande, at the time he contested the election, had 3 different nationalities. Adamu Dramani Sakande, at the time he swore the oath to become a member of parliament on the 9th of 6th and 7th, was still holding 3 citizenships. Adamu Dramani Sakande, after he had sworn the oath and became a member of parliament, was still traveling with his British passport. Show me Jachi Kwesen's other passport apart from his Ghanaian passport.
So that is the difference.
They're completely different. You are comparing apples and alugutugui. Completely different.
So.
They're completely different.
Right.
So and then that to force into. But
well, he's granted relief now. He can go to his constituency and campaign and all of that.
Not exactly. The judge would give a verdict on Friday.
Tomorrow.
But what the judge has said is that he can skip tomorrow's hearing and be in the constituency. To think in the first place that the judge would have said that on the day of his by-election should appear in court. You see, with a greater respect to our judiciary, justice must not just be done, but it must be seen to be done. And justice must be served to all manner of persons. The judges must bear in mind, look, the respected JSC is no longer Chief Justice. He's now a citizen like all of us. So they should all bear in mind that one day they would also leave the bench.
Right.
Now, Ato Forsen and all the shenanigans that are going on there, for me, again, simply because Ato Forsen has chosen to expose the rot in this government, they are turning the guns on Ato Forsen. How do you blame a deputy minister who on the
But he signed on for it. There is no testament, according to what we've been told, there's no testament that the minister at the time gave him such rights.
That's false.
Especially with the sums of money, the directive to release funds for that.
That's false. That's false. Again, Atufosin was not the procuring officer. He was not the procurement officer. It was not his ministry that bought the things. I mean, so you see, this is just about trying to gag Atufosin because at that time he was ranking on finance. He was spitting fire on them. Now he's minority leader. How do you gag him? It will fail. Let's move on.
But the court system will do what it will.
You see, if the court system works properly and the law is applied with common sense and legalese, there is no reason why Atufosin should not work.
President Akufo-Addo says, well, regardless of the fact that those ambulances were not fit for purpose, but there have been concessions made. One of the organizations involved wanted to pay about 2 million euros out of the 2.3
That is the organization. That is not Atufosin.
Right.
I've seen the mission. They say Atufosin wants to refund money. Atufosin did not take any money.
Let's talk about the credit ratings agencies. The president has described them as reckless. Professor Lord Mensah says it is only because Mr. President became angry that his government couldn't go out there and borrow. Your take on that?
Our president is an over-pumped spoiled kid.
What did you say?
Our president, Nando Dankwa Akufo-Addo, is an over-pumped spoiled kid.
You're calling, wait. You're calling our president a kid?
Oh, he's behaving like one. He's throwing tantrums.
Isn't that a bit of a low blow?
If the president...
A man of almost 80 years, you're calling him...
So then he should stop behaving like a spoiled kid. Our president is throwing tantrums on the international scale and embarrassing us. It's like you going to a church service with your child and your child is rolling on the floor and screaming because they didn't allow him dip his hand in the offering bowl. That's what our president is doing. This is the same man who ran around with these rating agencies and their ratings when he was candidate and used it to poo-poo the Mahama administration. He has overseen the worst economy in our country, reduced our country's economy to junk status, toilet paper status. And when they are telling him, he says that why should they tell him the truth? Our president hates to be told the truth.
But the ratings are getting better. The ratings are getting better.
Because you're not paying your debts. The ratings are a value of what your finances look like. Today, Ghana's finances are cosmetic. Let us start paying our debts. And let's see what will happen to our finances. Let's see what will happen to our balance of payment. The president should stop embarrassing us. Look, you failed, Mr. President. You've been abysmal. You are a colossal failure when it comes to governance in this country. You will go down in history as the worst president in Ghana's history, worse than even military dictators. You should begin to lick your wounds and show humility and not go around throwing tantrums like a spoiled over-pampered kid and disgracing our country. It is good enough that you have created a mess in our economy. It is worse that you are embarrassing us on the international scene. Mr. President, you and your handlers, stop it.
Let's wrap on these two fronts very quickly.
Yes.
In some 3 minutes, if you can manage the two. Yvonne Nelson's new book, I Am Not Yvonne Nelson. Yay or nay? As you would say in Parliament, yeah. Or, and I'm sure you've seen bits of it. I don't know whether you've read it. And then there's also LGBTQ. It's come to the fore again, a lot of talk about it. I want to know, are you going to pursue the bill in Parliament? What is the status of the bill? Okay. In recent times, in the UAE, you know the new Spider-Verse movie, there's a portion with an LGBTQ image and all of that. They've banned it there. What do you think about that? Just tell us, and you've spoken about the consequences of this fight on you. Yeah. These 2 points, very quickly.
Okay, so I think Yvonne Nelson's book is a very bold attempt at a tell-it-all. However, following the commentary that's coming out, it appears that it's not really a tell-it-all. It's a selective tell-it-all. There are questions about some of the narrations that have been made. We're beginning to see a lot of pushback on social media, people disputing some of the things she's saying, and people adding things to it.
But that's to be expected for a book like that.
Yeah, but I still hold the view that certain things ought to remain private. No matter how blatant you want to be or how bold you want to be, certain things, that's why there's a word called privacy.
Some have said that element shows her lack of emotional intelligence. Do you agree?
I'll leave the jury out on that. Before the headlines become some judge says Yvonne Nelson lacks emotional intelligence. and then that becomes a whole new social media thing. I would leave the jury out. I won't comment on that.
Do you think she should have written this book?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not against, and I think people must write books. I'm working on something. People must write books to tell their stories, but you must be. I don't want to use that phrase emotional intelligence because you've used it, but you must be able to measure what you put out and what you don't put out. I mean, imagine me putting out a book and chronicling all the times me and my wife have had a fight. To what intent and purpose does that serve? Okay, and putting out the sordid details of fights or putting out sordid details from your private life that go a long way to hurt other people outside of you. You begin to question some of those things, you know. But let me say hi to Tracy. I think she's been a very
Tracy success?
Yeah. I've seen her tweet, and I think that I celebrate her as a woman. This is someone, she's worked in my constituency with her foundation. She came to work with my office and did some distribution. And my respect for her has gone very up. I mean, her commentary on this matter makes me understand why Saka stuck with her for all this while. And Sarkodie is someone I've known for very many years. At the time I gave Sarkodie a show, he was a backup artist. He was a backup artist to RTVs. When I took him to Cape Coast in my previous life as an event organizer.
Around what time was this?
This was 2010.
2010.
Yeah, that's the time.
Around the same time.
At that time, no, 2009, 2010. At that time, the main act was RTVs, and the song was Ademado, Adego Crazy. They were the big acts. So it was then Sarkodie, Skillions, J-So, they were backup artists and all of that. But anyway, that's a different line. But I think that
LGBTQ.
On the LGBTQ thing, I honestly believe that it's a bill we will pass. I think that the world is coming to the realization that where Ghana stands is the place to stand. We're beginning to see pushbacks in the US. We've seen Florida pass legislation to limit trans concerts. We've seen the Secretary of Defense issue a statement from the Pentagon banning trans shows on US Air Force bases in this month. You're beginning to see a pushback. Last year alone, there were 331 legislations in the United States state houses of legislature against LGBTQ activity. The world is taking a stand.
You've seen the consequences for Uganda. I mean, there have been threats. There have been threats. Aren't you concerned?
There is no consequence. What they've done is they've redone their visa. Take your visa.
But there have been consequences for you, personally.
Oh, that one, there are plenty, but I'm like Inge Kante. If you pour water on stone, it doesn't do anything. You see, the harder they come, the farther I push. And so for me, this bill will pass it. They've gone to court. They've gotten two stooges of theirs to go to court. You know, one is in the High Court, one is in the Supreme Court. I'm wondering why the courts are going to want to even entertain any case at this point in time, because the courts must bear in mind that no court can issue a judgment or give directives to the president that you can't discuss this matter in cabinet. It is the prerogative of Parliament to pass legislation.
Right.
And so no court should think that they have the power to tell Parliament that you can pass this bill or you can't pass this bill. What they can do is what they did with the narcotics bill, the marijuana thing we did. After Parliament has passed this bill, you can pass a judgment saying that Parliament did not go through all the processes and nullify the law. But you can't tell Parliament that you cannot sit and pass a law.
In the end,
that's
though,
not the remedy
even if you pass this, the buck stops with the president.
When we get there, let's see if he won't sign or he won't sign. I thought he went to the Apostolic Church, because when we speak, they tell us that the president went to the Apostolic Church and said it will not be under his watch that LGBTQ will flourish or would come to fruition in Ghana. That's what he told Apostolic. Is it an Apostolic or the Anglican Church? One of them, I think, an Anglican Church in Manfi. So the president will be given an opportunity to walk his talk. It's simple.
Right. Thanks for joining us this morning. The next conversation we're having has to do with the sickle cell status. Do you know your status?
Yes.
Oh, wait. That's good to know.
I'm AA.
You're AA. Okay, so you're one of the 75 or so %. And now the encouragement is that those who are AA should also intermingle with those who are carriers so we can eradicate
it and get a number of AAs.
Those. Well, Member of Parliament for Ningo Prampram, Sam George. And by the way, congratulations on retaining. I don't think we've spoken.
I was waiting to start a fight with you off air if you didn't congratulate me.
But I started by congratulating you.
I would have said that you were one of the people who was hoping that I get kicked out. But now that you have congratulated me, I know that you are for me. Because you're either for me or against me. There's no middle ground.
Hey. Mantaya. Sam Jatta George, Member of Parliament for Ningo Pram Pram, joining us in the studio.
That's been good.
Stay with us. Up next, we have a conversation on sickle cell. Do you know your status? We'll be right back.